Hi there, I am Pamela Petrick, also known as the Dietless Dieting Coach, and I am a registered nurse, a certified holistic health coach, and busy women come to me when they are ready to ditch the yo-yo dieting, the constant weight regain, and the fatigue, and they are ready for natural, holistic strategies for their unique bodies so they can release the weight, keep it off, and feel light and free. And when they work with me via my Beyond the Fork Academy, we customize their journey for their own unique body. And so I am on a mission for you to find those solutions that are natural and holistic that'll work for your unique body, which is exactly why I created the Beyond the Food Weight Loss Summit, specifically designed for women over 40 who are ready to break free from the constant weight regain and nothing's working for you. This summit is different because I'm bringing together experts who will share their top strategies to help you release weight naturally without extreme diets, restrictions, or extreme workouts, and help you to achieve lasting weight loss and transform your health for good. Plus, every expert is giving you a free gift, all specifically geared for women over 40. Do you have your pen ready? It's time for our next featured expert for the Beyond the Food Weight Loss Summit, Real Solutions for Women Over 40.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm so excited you're here, and I'm so happy and pleased to be here to share about sleep for the Beyond the Food Summit. So, we are going to do a little bit of myth busting sleep. So, I'm going to give you some jobs to do as we're going through this. And we'll be talking about how to optimize sleep to improve our physical health, our mental health, our emotional well being. Sleep is very tied into every function in our body. So, whether you're just trying to maximize your potential, your attention, your nutrition, your weight loss, your exercise, all of these things have a role for sleep. So let's go ahead and dive in. I'll tell you a little bit about myself first. I have a PhD in clinical psychology. I've been in practice over 20 years at the doctorate level. I specialize in treating anxiety, stress, transitions, insomnia, use a variety of different strategies to help the folks I work with, lots grounded in mindfulness. I work out of South Denver, but provide telehealth for Colorado and New York and all SIPAC states. I work with adults also, in addition to therapy, also for intentional life coaching, and I work with mental health and other um, relationship based business providers for business coaching. I've written 4 books, Mindful Mondays, also an accompanying journal, a children's book called Rocky's Christmas Journey, and Intentional Private Practice Workbook, which is for relationship based businesses. Outside of my work, I am a mom of 3 kids, 3 dogs. Happily married to my husband for almost 30 years right now, and I enjoy reading. I enjoy learning more about the brain and behavior. I'm an artist, also practice a lot of yoga, and I am a champion for sleep. I love getting on a soapbox and sharing what I know about sleep, which we'll do in just a minute. A couple things just to be clear of. Please feel free to take down material for your own use, but I'd ask that you not redistribute it. And while I'm a psychologist, I am obviously not your psychologist. This is an educational presentation, which I hope you gain a lot for. It's not a substitute for counseling, therapy, or medical advice. All right, so let's start with a little look at what is sleep. So this chart on the right that looks to me, it looks like buildings, right? And not surprisingly, we refer to this as sleep architecture because it's kind of like these buildings that make up our sleep. And when we go to sleep, most of our sleep we think of as the conscious mind being quiet, the body being in active repair and restoration. So if you see up here, this white band is when we're awake. So we fall asleep and we go into light sleep. That's characterized by kind of drifting in and out. It's super easy to wake somebody up at that point. And sometimes people have what they're called hypnic jerks, where you notice that your body kind of like shakes a little bit. I throw that in there because that's completely normal. And that's not something I really knew about until I really dug into sleep. So if you experience those little twitches just as you're falling asleep, that's not uncommon. Stage two sleep is our brain waves slow down, and it's about 50% of the time that we're in sleep is in that kind of lighter stage two sleep. Stage three sleep is characterized by deeper, slower waves. That's the restorative sleep. It's only a small chunk of our sleep duration, maybe about 20%. And it's harder to rouse people when they're in that deep stage three sleep. All of these sleep phases are determined by looking at our EEG, so the energy kind of patterns that come from the brain. If you wear a Fitbit or some other kind of watch that shows your sleep stages, they're using other correlates. They're not able to record your brain activity on something like that. And I say that because sometimes people can get really attached to what those say. And I would say pay more attention to how well rested you feel, as well as your recollection of how many times you awake through the night. And I'll talk more about nighttime awakenings later on, but we'll come back to that. So, when people have sleep disorders, things like sleepwalking, sleep talking, other things like that, those typically happen in one of those stages, like typically deep sleep, and then what we call non REM sleep. Now, then we have REM sleep, REM sleep, that's dream sleep. Typically, the dreams that we experience and have memory of happen during that dream sleep. Our eyes are moving rapidly. During dream sleep, our mind is active, our body is very still. Um, there's a muscle inhibition process that's kind of our body puts in place so that we're not actually acting out of our dreams. And then as we move through the night, you can see these little buildings kind of change during the night. And later in the night, we spend more time. This light blue band is REM sleep or dream sleep. We spend a longer chunk of time in REM sleep closer to our wake up time. And that's important because if we're cutting off our sleep, like let's say this person goes to bed at 11, it looks like, and rather than sleeping until they naturally wake up at 7, they've got an alarm clock going off at 5 every morning. They're going to proportionally cut off a big chunk of their REM sleep. And REM sleep is really important for a lot of our waking things to rely on what we do in our dream sleep. So let's jump into what exactly that is. When we are sleeping, our brain can store and restore energy. Our brain goes through a cleanup process. We get rid of things like um, neurofibrillary plaques and tangles, dead material. We can consolidate new memory and we release growth hormones and prolactin. Those both have important immune and metabolic functions. So, growth hormone is not just for children who are growing. And we process emotions, which helps with our emotion regulation. That emotion processing and a lot of the memory pieces happen during dream sleep. So that's why we don't want to cut ourselves short there. Hormones that are involved in many disease processes are regulated during our sleep. Or another way of looking at it is our sleep has an impact on how those hormones are regulated. So, especially interesting research about hunger and satiety. Satiety is just like feeling full, feeling satisfied with what we eat. When people are sleep deprived, when they do studies, they sleep deprive people and they let them eat from a buffet, they tend to eat more. They consume more calories and they pick more calorically dense foods than people who are well rested. And then after they say they're full, if more food is brought out, those people that are sleep deprived tend to continue to eat. So you can see, just in that one basic thing of sleep deprivation, will tend to potentially throw our wellness plans off the rails if we're not getting enough sleep. When we're sleep deprived, it's a huge impact on our waking functioning. So we have a shorter attention span. People tend to have higher anxiety, impaired memory, like I just said, more hunger, grouchy mood. We've all probably experienced that. We don't retain information as well when we're not well rested. And then people who are well rested tend to have improved memory, improved mood. What does sleep deprivation look like? So, when studies are done, and frankly, they're not doing so many sleep deprivation studies anymore because we know it's really not good for our body. But what they have found is that when somebody has been awake for 19 hours straight, their driving is as impacted as if they were legally drunk. Okay, so that's 19 hours awake is 5 hours of sleep. So if you're running on a night of 5 hours of sleep by the end of your next day, you may be in this, in this phase where you're pretty impacted. Or another way of thinking about that would be if somebody got up, relatively early for a work day, worked all day, had evening plans and was out during the evening. By the end of that period, if they've been up 19 hours without consuming any substances, their driving is going to be impaired. Poor sleep in adults has a big contribution to work sickness and work absenteeism. Sleep duration is a strong correlate of physical health and lots of different domains. And like I said, when we're sleep deprived, we have a higher appetite, and we tend to choose those more calorically dense foods. All right, so here's our first myth or fact. So I want you to, as we go through this, think about each of these and think to yourself if this is true or not true. So our first one is healthy adults need 8 hours of sleep a night, but some people can get by fine on as little as 5 hours a night. So take a minute and think about that, maybe in relation to yourself. So that one is a myth. 8 hours is average. What you need might vary. Your mileage may vary. Five is definitely not enough. And I kind of already hinted at that on the former slide. So these people that say, yeah, I can get by just fine on, 4 hours of sleep. Most of us can function just fine once in a while on low sleep. But if it's on a continual basis, what just in general, what research tells us is that we're going to struggle. 8 hours is average, just like there's an average shoe size. We can give you a range. Probably most women, without knowing, I'm just going to make some guesses. I'm going to say most women's shoe size ranges from like, I don't know, 6.5 to 9 is probably average. Or, the range. The range for healthy adults is 7 to 9 hours, eight being smack in the middle there. You might need a little bit more. I know that I'm on the 8+ hours. If I'm consistently getting 7 hours of sleep, I'm not going to feel great. I know lots of adults who are perfectly healthy that do really well on 7 hours of sleep a night. So you need to know what your need is. As far as guidelines, our sleep need does shift through life. If you've had a child or been around a small child, newborns sleep 14 to 17 hours a lot of the day. Infants sleep a little bit less than that. As kids get older, it's a little bit less, a little bit less. School age kids, 9 to 11 hours. Teens, 8 to 10 hours, which most teens, I don't think, are getting 8 to 10 hours of sleep. And then adults, 7 to 9 hours. So you need to think about what is normal for you. The other piece I want to point out is thinking about your sleep opportunity. It's really important to know how much opportunity you're giving yourself for sleep. And here's what I mean by that. If you are, going about your evening, staying up, realizing, I hear this from people often, it's nice and quiet in the house, I can get a lot done. Suddenly it's midnight, and you're like, oh, I gotta get to bed because I have an early morning tomorrow. Get to bed at midnight. Let's say that you fall asleep by 12:30 and your alarm's going off at 6:30. If your sleep was pretty much perfect from 12:30 to 6:30, you've only given yourself 6 hours of sleep opportunity, which most likely is not going to be enough. You can't get more sleep than you're in bed. That seems obvious, but sometimes we seem to fool ourselves and think that we can. All right, our next myth or fact. As long as you get the sleep you need, your body can easily adjust to changes in your sleep schedule. Think about that. Maybe think about yourself in relation to that. That one is a myth. So if you've ever had jet lag, if you've ever done shift work, you've experienced that yourself. And the reason that our sleep doesn't just switch quickly when we, go to a different time zone or change our schedule and try to stay up really late and sleep in longer is because there's two different factors that impact our sleep. The first we call process S, and that's sleep drive. And that's due to the buildup of a chemical called adenosine in our brain, which builds up during the day while we're awake, and then it gets metabolized or broken down while we sleep. So the more we sleep, the more of that chemical gets metabolized, and the less sleepy we feel in the morning. We get up in the morning, hopefully, most of that chemical is gone. As we're awake during the day, that chemical builds, hits a max around the bedtime, and that's when we feel sleepy. The other factor that's involved is process C, standing for circadian rhythm, and that's our daily rhythms that we tend to orient to the day using the cues from the environment, which are things like light and temperature. Those are the two main ones, are light and temperature. So as we wake up, there's usually bright sunlight in the morning that sets our internal clock that it's daytime. The longer we're awake, we're kind of following the patterns of the sun. In the evening, sun's getting lower, it's getting darker, it's getting cooler. That sends a signal that we're going to start getting sleepy, getting ready for bed. And in a perfect world, those two pieces, process S and process C, line up together. So we're awake as the day, as it gets to be the evening, it's getting darker, it's getting cooler, and we have a buildup of that chemical called adenosine in our brain, and that helps us to go to sleep. So, in thinking about sleep and what impacts sleep, we can think about things that affect both of those factors. Things that affect process S is anything that blocks that adenosine receptor in our brain. And the main one that does that is caffeine. So, caffeine fits into that same receptor. That's why if you wake up and you're sleepy and you have a couple cups of coffee, suddenly you've got a lot of energy. You might still be tired, frankly, but you're not feeling it because you just plugged up all those receptors. It's like if they were locks for keys, the caffeine is like a piece of bubble gum that you've stuck over the front of that lock. So you no longer notice that you feel sleepy. The other thing is what would metabolize that adenosine are things like naps. So if you're taking a regular afternoon nap, you're kind of burning off some of what's going to actually help you sleep. So if you've burnt some of that off because you took a 2-hour nap in the afternoon, you're not going to be as tired at bedtime and it's going to be harder to fall asleep. As far as process C, anything that interferes with our connection to that day night cycle is what can hinder our sleep. So that's things like if it's too hot at night, we tend to sleep better when it's a little bit cool. If we have a lot of light in the evening, there's lots of information that you've probably heard about light from technology in the evening. That can interfere with our sleep as well. It interferes with the release of melatonin, which is in response to that shift in light, because of our orientation to the day. All right. So, myth or fact? There are research backed strategies that you can use to help yourself sleep better. Well, that one's a fact. That shouldn't be a surprise if I'm going to be here to talk to you about it. We refer to all the things that help us to sleep better as sleep hygiene. So it's all the physical, behavioral, and environmental factors that you can take advantage of to maximize falling asleep, staying asleep, and being well rested. And there's a whole host of them. Some of these you may have heard of before, some of them might be brand new to you. So, physical things that can help us to sleep better, avoiding caffeine. Certainly know your limits, know when to cut yourself off. If you're really struggling with sleep, you might want to cut it off completely to see what will happen. But certainly, caffeine has a 5-hour half-life. That means it takes 5 hours to get rid of 50% of the caffeine in your body. So, if you're loading up on a late afternoon, double shot of something, it's going to probably still be in your body at 10 o'clock at night when you're trying to go to sleep. So, taking that into consideration and keeping your consumption earlier in the day would be advisable. Alcohol really impacts that sleep architecture. If you remember that earlier slide, it kind of just disrupts our sleep cycles. One of the metabolites, one of the things that alcohol breaks into is a stimulant. So while alcohol as a whole is a nervous system depressant, when our liver is processing it, one of the chemicals basically that comes out of that is a stimulant. So some people will have the experience of they have a couple glasses of wine at dinner, they go to sleep, no problem. They wake up at 2 in the morning and they're staring at the ceiling and don't know why they're awake, just know that they can't fall back asleep. Similarly, other medications, drugs, recreational, prescription, and over the counter can all impact sleep. So it's really important to know what you're putting into your body. Talk to your doctor about that if you have concerns about it. Another big thing that impacts sleep that's physical is medical conditions and pain. So if you've ever had, really bad cold and cough, struggle to breathe at night, coughing a lot, you might have woken yourself up and have trouble getting back to sleep. Or similarly, if you've been in a lot of pain, an injury, a surgery, something of that nature, that can also disrupt sleep. And the reason I mention those is while hopefully those are short lived conditions, sometimes things like a medical condition or a period of pain can kind of be the trigger that uh, spins off into an ongoing insomnia problem. So even once we've addressed the issue that caused the insomnia, the behavioral issue of insomnia can continue after that. Heavy meals before bed can also impact sleep. Some things that help sleep: daily exercise. Daily exercise is great for sleep, especially if you can get it early in the day, because it also sets that our internal clock going. And then similarly, daily exposure to sunlight, especially early in the day. So perfect world would be get outside early in the day, get some sunshine, get some fresh air, get some exercise, and reset your internal clock. On the other end of it, you want lower light levels before bed and a drop in your core body temperature before bed. So I always tell people use the minimum amount of light that you need for the task that you're trying to do in the evening. And if possible, keep the house a little bit cooler at night, or do something like take a warm shower or bath in the evening. That actually drops our core body temperature when we get out of the water, and our body, kind of readjusts. And it's important also to think about other things that could be having a physical impact on your sleep. A big one is sleep apnea. It's really important to talk to your physician if you think there might be an underlying condition or medication that's impacting your sleep. Behaviorally, some things that can help our sleep are having a calm and consistent bedtime routine. This is a factor that we all have a lot of control over. So, stacking that hour before bed with things that are going to be calm, things that we're going to just keep a consistent order, consistent routine to, those become cues for being sleepy. So, if we can do that same routine in more or less the same order most nights before bed, then those things that we're doing before bed are going to start sending the signal to the body that it's time to get ready for bed. We also want to minimize daytime sleep. So naps, I always tell people, like, listen to your body. If you're sick or you overdid it or something's going on and you need a nap, it's okay to do that. But certainly if you're working on improving your sleep, it's best really not to nap. If you have to nap, do it, in the earlier part of the day. But you want to avoid doing, taking like a late afternoon nap would probably not be advised. You can practice relaxation strategies. So you can do things that are going to help to lower your body's arousal level. That's going to help, not just with sleep, but also probably with stress management and anxiety. You can track your sleep. That's always a really helpful thing. And usually the starting point when I'm working with folks on sleep problems or insomnia is to track their sleep so we can get a really good picture of what's going on. And then if you're in your bedroom and you can't sleep, it's best to leave the bedroom. We don't want people to start associating their bedroom with being stressed out about sleep, because that makes it harder to sleep. So we want to break that cycle of anxiety and stress and insomnia by getting people out of that environment. And then, if you had that experience, you've been in bed for 45, 50 minutes, can't sleep, you're starting to get stressed and toss and turn and all that, go somewhere else in the house, do something that's not super stimulating. And when you start to feel sleepy, come back to bed. Environmental things that we can control. Biggest one is that our bedroom should be used only for sleep and intimacy. And we call that stimulus control. Again, you want to associate the bedroom with being calm, with resting, with sleeping. You don't want to be sitting in bed with your laptop on your lap doing, work or on a Zoom call, or, reviewing your finances or anything like that. Really just the bed, especially, and the bedroom in general should be kept for sleep only. Keep the bedroom uncluttered. You can reduce physical clutter around you, visual clutter, auditory clutter. It kind of reduces your mental load, and helps you to sleep. Keep the bedroom cooler. I mentioned that one already. Environmentally, eliminating all light and noise to the best of your ability, eliminating distractions like electronics, and just in general, keeping your bedroom calm. Okay, myth or fact: insomnia is part of the normal aging process. That one's a myth. Okay. Lots of people seem to believe that, but it's actually a myth. So, insomnia is trouble falling asleep. We call that sleep onset. Staying asleep, we call that sleep maintenance, or waking up real tired in the morning, or waking up a lot earlier than you want to and unable to fall back asleep. So, sometimes people have short periods of insomnia. We call that acute insomnia, it's usually in response to something and it usually goes away on its own. But it can kind of spin out into chronic insomnia, which is when a person has insufficient sleep quality or quantity at least 3 nights a week, at least 3 months. Insomnia impacts 1 in 10 adults, and about 30% of adults experience short term insomnia. That's a pretty high number. So, the recommended sleep need for adults, like we already said, is 7 to 9 hours, so 8 hours on average. However, 35.3% of American adults typically receive less than 7 hours of sleep per day. So, there's a huge chunk of people walking around without enough rest. When people have chronic insomnia, they tend to think a lot, spend a lot of time thinking about sleep, worrying about sleep. And that worry leads to increased physiological arousal. So it's almost like our body's getting ready for a fight when we're going to bed. When we have that increased arousal, arousal is, kind of opposite or inverse correlation with falling asleep. So the more aroused we are, the harder it is to sleep. So the psychological aspects like worry that can come about after some trouble with sleep then impact the physiological aspect, the arousal that interferes with sleep. So we get this vicious cycle of stress, increased arousal, and insomnia. Okay, myth or fact? Sleeping pills are the first line of treatment for insomnia. That one is a myth. So, cognitive behavior therapy for insomnia is recommended first line of treatment for insomnia by the World Health Organization. Unlike medications, there's no dependence or withdrawal when you use this. So, what is cognitive behavior therapy for insomnia? It works to change sleep by first assessing sleep, looking at quantitative and qualitative measures and variables that impact sleep, providing a lot of education in order to maximize sleep hygiene. We look at sleep efficiency and rework our sleep schedule in order to maximize the efficiency. In other words, we want as much of the time as possible when we're in bed to be time sleeping. And then there's a cognitive therapy component where we look at distorted thoughts that develop around sleep. Things we might tell ourselves when we're anxious about our sleep or having trouble sleeping. So, one other piece I do want to mention, based on our audience here, is a lot of people will say to me, like, look, I look at my sleep tracker and I'm awake, 5, 6 different times a night, or have the memory of, like, oh, I was awake. I remember I woke up a couple different times during the night. What's wrong with my sleep? Waking up during the night is normal. And most people wake up at least a couple times a night. A lot of people don't remember it at all. So if you're like talking with a friend, they're like, oh, I never wake up at night. And you start thinking, well, what's wrong with me? The reality is, most people do wake up at some point during the night. They just don't remember it. It's not a problem if you fall back asleep relatively quickly. The statistic that I can cite for you here that I've read is that on average, a woman 40 years old on average wakes up 4 times a night. So that's pretty significant. If you're doing that, going back to sleep, or maybe, once during the night you're getting up and using the bathroom and going back to sleep, it's not a problem. It's if you're doing that and you're up for, an hour each time, or you can't fall back asleep, or that, that's it, your night is over. That's when it would be a little bit more concerning of a wake up. All right, so I want to share with you a little bit more about when to get support with insomnia or sleep problems in general, if they're interfering with your daytime functioning, so your social world, your academic or occupational functioning. If you have a medical or substance or a medical disorder or substance that you're using that's interfering with sleep. If you have major changes in your sleep for reasons that you're aware of or not, or if you're thinking about somebody you care about, if you're concerned about your child, your loved one's sleep, or your own sleep, and where can you get some support around that? Finding a provider who's trained in CBTI is a great starting point. If you're concerned about medical issues, a physician would be helpful there. If you have a great relationship with your doctor, they may also be a great source of referrals for CBTI providers. If you're concerned about things like obstructive sleep apnea, that's breathing issues in your sleep, often characterized by heavy snoring, you might want to see a sleep medicine specialist or at least start talking to your doctor about that. And then if you're kind of like sub-threshold insomnia, you'd like your sleep to be better, but it's not horrible. There's a lot of information. There's a lot that you can do on your own for sleep. There's self-guided courses, books, workbooks that you'll likely find some good support from. Which brings me to what I want to share with you. Your free gift is my Small Steps to Better Sleep planner, which is 35 pages, chock full of strategies to help improve your sleep. It's easy to implement. It's stepwise, lots of great things that you can start putting in place and you can build on to improve your sleep. And then, as an extra bonus, if you're an all access member of the summit, I'm doing a live Q&A workshop just for you. It will be on May 21st, noon Mountain Time. You'll have all the info about that and how to join that. So I'm really looking forward to that. Really looking forward to seeing you guys in person and hearing your questions and getting some more time to talk about sleep. I also have a blog where I frequently talk about sleep that you can find on my website, which is drkimdwyer.com, or you can find me in my Facebook group, which is called Intentional Living with Dr. Kim Dwyer. So thanks you guys for being here. I hope this was helpful to you and I wish you sweet dreams. Feel free to reach out to me with questions or if you're looking to share this information with others, I welcome you to get in touch. Have a great rest of the summit and thanks so much for being here today.